The Carroll County community is frightened and concerned tonight as investigators search for whoever killed these two Delphi teens.
Tonight, CBS 4 is speaking exclusively with the owner of the property where the two girls were found dead. Alexis McAdams is live in Delphi with more on that and the investigation. Alexis.
That's right, Bob, Debbie. This investigation is active and ongoing. Tonight, investigators are telling us they're using every resource they have to search Carroll County and surrounding areas to find the suspect or suspects who killed these two teenage girls. As you mentioned, we talk exclusively tonight with the owner of the 40 acres here behind me. That is private property, and that's where those girls' bodies were found yesterday afternoon. Tonight, he tells us a few things about where those bodies were found and some of the things surrounding the investigation, but also says that the man who found those bodies was a volunteer who lives nearby. 24 hours after two bodies were found in a wooded area in Delphi, a coroner confirms the town's worst fears. The bodies belong to 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, who were both last seen hiking in that area on a day off from school. We now know the two girls were murdered, and their killer is still out there.
We have nobody in custody at this time. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, there is somebody out there that did this horrendous crime.
As Alexis McAdams joins us now after walking the property where those girls were found.
And actually, yeah, this is the first time I think that we're talking about this.
Yeah, we were actually down in that area today for the very first time. We were down there with the property owner, Ron Logan, and this is his 40-acre private lot behind me. To trek down to the area where these girls were found, it was so steep down a ravine, it was really actually hard to keep our footing. But Logan showed us for the very first time that crime scene. Tonight, investigators have lifted the crime scene tape from this area and tell us they're going through hundreds of tips trying to find any information that could lead to a possible suspect or suspects in this double murder investigation. This is where the girls were found. It's less than half a mile from the Monon High Bridge where they were last seen on Monday. Officers still processing evidence that they gathered here. They were out here for hours ever since those girls went missing. The scene may be clear tonight, but Logan tells me his property won't ever be the same.
I want to show you everything, how they could have got here, because you're going to be as confused as I am. How did these two little girls get here from the high bridge with all this rough terrain without somebody making them come here? The high bridge is right across the creek here. It runs all the way down where this creek and the land joins together. Where they join together is the last photographs taken of the girls.
Downhill. State police released that audio at a news conference this morning. Now, they're not confirming that this is the voice of the man you see on your screen there, but they need you at home watching to help them identify this person. Now, as we mentioned, we have team coverage of today's events.
Let's go first to CBS 4's Alexis McAdams in Delphi with more on what we learned from police today.
That's right, Bob, Debbie, that audio you just played is absolutely heartbreaking to listen to. Makes you think about what those girls went through in the last seconds of their life here in this crime scene area behind me where those bodies were found on the 40 acres of private property in Delphi. And although it is difficult to listen to and a little bit hard to understand on that audio tape, officials tell us it could hold a huge key to this investigation to find the killer of Abby and Libby.
Why Libby? Why Abby? Why Delphi? Why Carroll County?
You can feel the heartbreak in the small city of Delphi.
Every time something like this happens, a little piece of us dies as well.
Investigators are desperate for clues to help them solve the murders of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German.
This is a classic example and a clear example that evil lives amongst us.
Today, officials released a disturbing audio clip recorded by Libby German the day they disappeared. In it, you hear a man say, "Down the hill." We've looped that audio several times.
Downhill. Downhill. Downhill.
Libby recorded that man's voice. It's part of a longer clip on her cell phone. The same phone where investigators found this photo of the main suspect walking along the Monon High Bridge right near the girls.
This young lady's a hero.
That audio clip that you just mentioned that we've been replaying here for the public, hoping that somebody comes forward, was released yesterday. And since that point, officers tell me tonight they've had more than 5,000 tips roll in. Right now, more than 6,000 billboards are up all around the nation with that man's photo on it.
CBS 4's Alexis McAdams has been covering this story for nearly a week now. She's in Delphi again tonight with what police are saying about this suspect.
Tonight, police are searching the entire state, trying to track down a man that was captured on camera walking down the same trails where Abby and Libby were last seen before they were murdered. Officers tell us tonight they won't stop until he's behind bars.
We're not sure where he's from. We're checking all of our leads.
There's an all-out manhunt tonight for this man, who police say is now the main suspect in the murders of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German.
We're asking people that would live in Logansport all the way to Lafayette that if they saw somebody around that late afternoon, that evening of Monday the 13th, if they saw somebody walking down the roadway that just did not look like they should be there, or they're just a hitchhiker, we would like to know about that person.
Every single person that we were standing in the room with, including reporters and police, are taking this case extremely personal. I can tell you right now, the family is begging anyone with information either here in Carroll County, in Delphi, or around the nation to please come forward with information.
It's the small things that seem to hurt the most. It's just natural to holler for them to come to dinner, or in the mornings to get up and get ready for school. The silence when we don't hear their voice.
The world, as Mike Patty knew it, turned upside down when his 14-year-old granddaughter, Libby German, and her best friend, 13-year-old Abby Williams, were murdered on a trail in Delphi. Their killer is still out there.
Somebody knows something. Somebody has to know this person. Really study the picture and listen to the audio clip. He's someone's neighbor, co-worker, family member, friend, husband, or acquaintance.
So tonight, in Libby and Abby's honor, we want you to take that minute. We're going to show you that man's picture one more time and play the voice telling those girls to go down the hill once again. Listen and see if you recognize any of that information.
Down the hill. Down the hill. Down the hill.
This will be the first Mother's Day in more than a decade that Abby Williams and Liberty German's families have spent without their girls. Tonight, they tell us they're holding on to their memories and pushing forward for answers.
The pictures are a little bit harder to come across now. And you know, that it's that instantaneous ache that wasn't there to begin with. And now with Mother's Day around the corner, you know, trying to figure out, what do we do? You know, what do I do? You know, because I don't feel like celebrating much this year.
Tonight, police tell us they have enough probable cause to search Ronald Logan's home and property here in Delphi. Logan is the owner of the 40 acres of private property where Abby and Libby's bodies were found earlier in February after they went missing. If you see over my shoulder, you can see that property, and it's still very active and will be until police finish up this investigation. I actually walked with Ron to the crime scene after it was cleared by investigators a few weeks ago. He showed us the area where the girls were found. Tonight, police are searching for evidence to either connect him to the case or clear his name. This is at least the second warrant served at his property recently, but the investigation has led police to take another close look.
We have to have enough to give a judge the reasonable suspicion that there's something there, and that's what we've done, just with the information that we've gained through the investigative process.
Tonight, Libby's grandpa, Mike Patty, invited me inside of his home. He and his family are completely devastated, but he feels a big responsibility to Abby and Libby and wants to be the voice that these girls had taken away and to help find the killer.
And somebody out there has the message or has the tip that we need, and that's why I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to put myself out there for the betterment of both of our families as well as the community and again the state or the nation. Pull this person or persons off the street.
Knowing that this possibly could be your neighbor or somebody that's in another state, what are you thinking at this point?
I'm thinking that continue to call in with the tips so they can have more information available to them to continue to run this down, because it might take one more little piece of a tip that ties it to somebody or ties it to a tip they're already working on. That's why I said it doesn't matter how small it is. And let the investigators run that down.
Since Mike spoke publicly, Indiana State Police tell us the number of daily tips they've received have jumped up more than 200%.
And Libby German were murdered on a trail. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Donaldson.
I'm Debbie Knox, and officers tell us they made this sketch from information from witnesses who saw the man on the trail the day of the murders.
CBS 4's Alexis McAdams is live in Delphi right now with more on the story.
We've all been waiting to see this man's face for more than 5.5 months. Tonight, family members of both Abby and Libby tell me they hope this sketch is the key to cracking this case.
It's been a while. It took a little bit. People are scared, or afraid to be recognized by the subject.
5 months after Abby Williams and Libby German were killed on the Delphi Historic Trails, Indiana State Police have released a sketch that gives a much more detailed look at the man they say is responsible.
It shows a little more facial features.
Police say the man is between 5'6" and 5'10", weighs 180 to 220 pounds, and has reddish-brown hair.
It gives you a little more information on what's we're looking at, who the suspect might be, and that's why we feel it is very important that this picture's out there.
Tonight, the lead detective on the Delphi case tells me although the killer thinks that he got away, every single day lab techs are working to process evidence, including DNA that was left at the crime scene.
It takes a lot of time, and we want to be very thorough, so we want to take our time, make sure our I's are dotted, T's are crossed. But it's a tough case.
A case Indiana State Police First Sergeant Jerry Holman has worked every day for the past 6 months.
We're getting closer every day. I know that's cliche, but we are.
Dozens of state, local, and federal agencies still working around the clock to track down the man they believe killed Abby Williams and Libby German while the girls were out on a walk on the Delphi Historic Trails in February.
We're stronger than ever.
Police tell me they've conducted hundreds of interviews, followed up on thousands of leads, and served dozens of search warrants to find clues the killer may have left behind. Was there DNA evidence found at the scene of the crime?
I think at every crime scene you have, you're going to have DNA. We're still working on identifying whose all DNA we have there.
Along with DNA evidence, police also have the suspect's voice.
And a person of interest in the Delphi double homicide investigation. We're digging into his time spent in Indiana.
And Bob, State Police say that Daniel Nations could be connected to the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. Nations is a convicted sex offender who was recently arrested in Colorado. CBS 4's Alexis McAdams spoke to the family of one of the girls about this update.
Tonight, Indiana State Police tell us they'll push to get a DNA sample from Daniel Nations to either clear him or connect him to the Delphi case.
And it is quite uncanny on how similar his features are to the sketch.
31-year-old Daniel Nations is behind bars in Colorado.
I don't know if this was just a fluke.
Arrested for allegedly threatening people with a hatchet on a Colorado trail where a biker was shot and killed just 2 weeks ago.
What are the odds that somebody in Colorado gets stopped, has Indiana plates, expired plates from nowhere, and there he is.
Now, Indiana State Police tell us Nations is a person of interest in the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German.
It's not just him that we're looking at, but all the cases that we and all the pictures that we've received, we do the same thing with.
We're learning Nations was in central Indiana the week Abby and Libby were murdered.
That's right. Tonight, deputies here at the Morgan County Sheriff's Department tell us Nations was here one day after Abby and Libby were murdered. Police say 31-year-old Daniel Nations was living in Morgan County when Abby Williams and Libby German were murdered.
The last address that he reported with us was that he was staying homeless in an area of State Road 67 under the bridges.
Because Nations was homeless and a convicted sex offender, he had to check in weekly with an investigator at the Morgan County Sheriff's Department.
He came in on February 7th, 2017, and then he came in on February 14th, 2017. And checked in.
February 14th, the day the girls' bodies were found. According to these forms from the Morgan County Sheriff's Department, Nations never missed a weekly check-in from January 31st until April 4th of this year.
He was always punctual as far as reporting.
At this point, he said that he had a car or he didn't have a car?
There was times where he did, and there's times where, he has having vehicle problems, I think.
Until last week, Libby German's grandparents, Mike and Becky Patty, had never heard of Daniel Nations. What are you thinking right now, today, knowing that he's in a jail right now in Colorado and possibly could be connected?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that the information proves that this is the guy.
Then they saw his picture.
I don't want to get my hopes up too much. We've been through this several times, and when you go through that drop, when it's not them, is tremendous.
So when you look at the suspect sketch and Daniel Nations' picture, do you think that there's similarities?
Absolutely. Oh, I see the goatee and the lips. It's kind of what sticks out to me.
The eyes. The eyes. I think the eyes are what convinced me that it could potentially be him.
Right now, those similarities are not enough to connect the convicted sex offender to the Delphi case. He was living homeless in Indiana at the time of the murders of Abby and Libby.
I don't want to downplay it, you know, as just another person, but it is another tip and lead, and I've learned through this whole thing that I have to rely on facts and data.
Nation's arrest is just one of hundreds of leads Indiana State Police are investigating. You're sitting here thinking, I still can't believe we don't have the killer behind bars.
Absolutely, yeah, I do feel that way. But until I receive that call from the investigators that we've arrested somebody responsible for the murders of the girls here in Delphi, we're staying vigilant on our campaign to spread out this word as far and as wide as possible.
The Patties and Williams still waiting for that one last tip. If they do put somebody behind bars and you do have the chance to say something to that person, is there anything that you would want to say to Abby and Libby's killer?
I've thought about that a lot. And you can plan, you can rehearse, you can think you'll know exactly what you're going to say to him if you was face to face with him. But until you're standing there, I don't think anybody would ever know what they'd say to him.
Daniel Nations remains behind bars in Colorado. His wife is now speaking exclusively to our Alexis McAdams about her husband being named a person of interest in the murders of 2 Delphi teens. So the question tonight, Alexis, what did she tell you?
Well, Debbie, we learned a lot today from talking to Caitlin Nations. She tells me Daniel actually talked about the Delphi murders in the past, and tonight Caitlin tells me she's sick to her stomach that her husband of 6 years is now being questioned in connection to Abby and Libby's deaths. Caitlin, do you think the Delphi murder suspect looks like Daniel?
I've been with Daniel for almost 6 years. We've been married. And looking at that picture and looking at him, there's a lot of similarities.
The question we've been asking for weeks, is Daniel Nations connected to the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German? Tonight, we asked his wife, Caitlin.
Honestly, I don't want to say I can see him doing it or not.
So, where was Daniel the day Abby and Libby were murdered? Where was Daniel on February 13th?
So I had an ultrasound that day, and I'm pretty sure he came with me, but I'm not 100%.
Caitlin tells me Daniel did not have access to her car on February 13th.
You know, how can somebody continue to walk around out there for 10 months and we don't have him yet?
10 months later, and police are still trying to track that killer down. Investigators know what he looks like and what he sounds like, but have not found him yet.
Am I frustrated with the police and their work activity? Absolutely not. I mean, they're working as diligently as I've ever seen somebody work on something.
Abby's last Christmas is still on her mom Anna's mind.
Christmas morning, and got through all of the presents, and they started going through their stockings. And Abby just had this look on her face, and I was like, babe, what is the matter? She goes, I didn't have a stocking. And I went, Mom forgot. Mom forgot. And I was like, honey, I'm sorry. I will make this up to you. And then you don't always get that chance. And that, for a while, was a really hard moment to think about after the fact, that here it was, the last one. And it wasn't perfect. As the same thing with the softball.
And this year, Abby will have a stocking hung by the tree as both families pray for justice and try to keep hope in their hearts.
So in the picture that you guys have shared with us so many times, they have these hats on. So then when you went and found these at the store, you knew these had to go on the tree.
It was like perfect. Like we weren't really sure what we were looking for when we went to the store that day.
Praying someone out there who knows this killer speaks out and closes this chapter in their life.
If you want to give the girls a Christmas present, call it in. You know what I mean? Call that information in so we can have one chapter in this story that we're in, of life that we're living now. We can close that chapter.
So as you enjoy the holidays with your own family and sit around a Christmas tree enjoying your memories, think about Abby and Libby and their families and what they're going through this time of year, and do the right thing. If you have any information on this case, pick up the phone and call 844-459-5786 with that last tip that could crack this case. Reporting tonight in Delphi, I'm Alexis McAdams. Back to you.